I'm Steve Broding. I'd like to welcome you and thank you for coming this afternoon. The reason you're here is that you're interested in seeing Fort Wayne become a better place along with the region. And one of the things we need to do as part of that effort is to try to learn from other communities that have been successful at their revitalization initiatives. And one of the communities that is regularly cited is Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it's our pleasure to have Jack Murrah here with us today. Jack was involved with Lyndhurst Foundation in Chattanooga for about 30 years, much of that time as president of the foundation. Prior to joining Lyndhurst, he was an educator, so he made an interesting sort of mid-career transition, but Lyndhurst was really one of the pioneers in the fundamental change that went on in Chattanooga. And I think you're going to enjoy Jack's comments, and we'll allow some time for Q&A. I do want to say I know that there are quite a few people that have 3 o'clock meetings, and I want to assure Jack that the departures at about 10 to 3 are not, I'm sure, not going to be attributable to the delivery of your message. So I apologize for that, but we'll try to get through Jack's presentation and then get to some Q&A before you folks start heading off. So with that, please join me in welcoming from Chattanooga, Jack Murrah.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me now? Do I need to talk louder? I'm really honored to be in this community. I told people that I fell in love with the city before the plane landed. I live in an area, ridges and valleys and mountains, and we absolutely love them, but there's nothing but clay and rocks. And if you like to farm and garden as I do, well, I saw that beautiful flat rich soil around here and felt envy. And my affection for the city has only grown in the time that I've had to meet people and visit places here. I would like to begin by sort of making the case that Chattanooga and Fort Wayne actually have a lot in common, though it wouldn't necessarily be immediately obvious that we do. In 1863, and believe me, I'm not going to take you through the next 150 years, but in the fall of 1863 was one of the monumental battles of the Civil War that took place at Chattanooga, which is a small village virtually at that time. And when the Battle of Chattanooga was over, the Confederacy was finished, basically. It was all downhill from there. And there was a lieutenant colonel in the Union Army from Indiana who was in that battle and who led an aerial bombardment of downtown Chattanooga and hit the only active church, the First Presbyterian Church, in the center of town. And then the war ended, and in 1871, which was a mere 6 years after the end of the war, Lieutenant Colonel John T. Wilder was elected mayor of Chattanooga. Now, I don't know how many of you have spent time in the South, but I can tell you that there wasn't another city in the South that might have elected a Union officer as mayor of the city. And that speaks in part to the fact that while Chattanooga is in the South, it isn't quite a southern city. We are in the southern Appalachian region, which itself is utterly different from the rest of the South. Demographically, physiographically, we are the mountainous region settled by Scots-Irish, who didn't identify with the Confederate cause, was not a plantation economy. It was basically settled by people who were pro-union, not because they were sympathetic to African Americans, but because they just wanted to be left the hell alone. They didn't have a dog in that fight, and they didn't ever feel any deep attachment to the whole business. And in fact, after the war, the city actively recruited people from this part of the country to move to the city to help develop its economy. There have been a good many Union soldiers and officers who had been whirled away in Chattanooga for a good bit of time there and had a chance to see the physical environment and the natural resources of the area. So they already, in some ways, had an eye on Chattanooga. We have this huge river, and I like to think that in some ways Chattanooga invited Yankees to come create a Great Lakes economy on the banks of the Tennessee River. We had an economy that is remarkably like those of the cities in this part of the country. Metal fabricating was the dominant industry. We didn't have steel mills, we had foundries, lots of them. And we had other fairly dirty industries as well. And it produced for us an economy that held up very well until about 1970. Backing up just a little bit, I would say that in the period from 1870 to 1920, Chattanooga was a very entrepreneurial city. It was a wide open place. It wasn't southern, it did not have a clear identity that was exclusive in any way. It welcomed people who were willing to come and make a stake and try to build a community. And several of those enterprises were very successful. And by the time we got to 1920, that generation that had largely developed this innovative economy, unique among southern cities, handed off the reins of power to the next generation of people. And if you know anything about family dynamics of entrepreneurial families, there's a pattern. It's not universal, but common, in that the entrepreneur is typically a larger-than-life character, high tolerance for risk, buccaneer of sorts, willing to fail, and extreme confidence that you could fail several times, and there was always an opportunity for success still down the road. The children of great entrepreneurs are often see themselves as not able to fill those shoes. It's just this person was so much larger than life that they don't see themselves as big risk takers. In fact, their mission in life is not to lose what Daddy made. And in those days, it was Daddy, pretty much. And so they go into what I think of as protectionist mode. They go into preservationist mode. How do we ensure that the things that we've inherited don't slip away from us, and that we wind up looking like the fools who lost the family fortune? And that mode of operation has a finite lifetime. You can do that for just so long, because the world is essentially a dynamic place, and it'll just undo your efforts to preserve. And usually in the last stages of your effort to preserve, you almost strangle the thing to death because you're so fearful. And in many ways, that culture took over in Chattanooga. It was a well-managed community during its years of not being entrepreneurial, but being what I call a